Master the psychology of victory. In this video, I will tell you all the ways that leads to victory. Begins in the deepest level of the human mind, where silence is not empty but full of hidden power, where awareness sharpens itself into something stronger than any weapon. A lone strategist stands in complete isolation, surrounded by nothing but an endless, silent void. There is no noise, no distraction, no presence of others, only the weight of his own thoughts, shaping the battlefield within his mind. He stands still, yet everything is moving. Inside him, every thought, every belief, every emotion is being observed, analyzed, and refined. He understands that victory does not begin in action. It begins in clarity. It begins in control. It begins in the unseen space where decisions are formed before they ever reach reality. The air feels frozen, as if time itself is waiting for him to decide whether he will rise or fall. In this silence, he realizes that most battles are already lost before they even begin. They are lost in distraction, in doubt, in emotional instability, in lack of preparation. The untrained mind creates defeat long before the world has a chance to test it, but he refuses to allow that weakness to take control. He understands that true strength does not need to be loud. It does not need to prove itself to anyone. It is quiet. It is disciplined. It is consistent. It is built slowly through awareness and intentional thought. Every belief he carries becomes a foundation. Every thought becomes a tool. Every internal voice must be trained to support his direction rather than destroy his focus. He carries no weapon, yet he is fully armed. His focus is sharp. His discipline is unbreakable. His awareness is constant. Every breath is controlled. Every reaction is intentional. Every emotion is observed rather than blindly followed. In this isolation, there is no place to hide from fear, from doubt, from confusion, so he faces them directly, not with resistance but with control. He studies his fear and understands it. He studies his doubt and reshapes it. He studies his confusion and transforms it into clarity. Every internal conflict becomes training. Every weakness becomes an opportunity to build strength. Every moment becomes a step toward mastery. The empty environment around him begins to reflect his inner state. The vast silence represents unlimited possibility, but also intense pressure, because without external noise, the voice within becomes louder. Every hidden belief, every suppressed fear, every untrained thought rises to the surface, demanding attention and control. This is where true mastery is created, not in comfort, not in chaos, but in silence, where the mind is forced to confront itself and evolve. He begins to study invisible opponents, not physical enemies, but and human tendencies. He observes how people hesitate, how they react under pressure, how they lose control, and how they rise again. This awareness gives him an advantage, allowing him to predict outcomes before they happen and understand situations before they unfold. This is not manipulation. This is awareness. This is precision. This is control. Silence becomes his teacher, guiding him through patience, timing, and emotional discipline. He learns that rushing leads to mistakes, while stillness leads to understanding, and understanding leads to victory. Every second spent in control sharpens his perception, strengthens his awareness, and deepens his ability to respond rather than react. His progress is not physical. It is mental. Every step forward is a step deeper into mastery of self. He begins to think differently, to act differently, to see differently. He no longer reacts blindly. He responds with purpose, with calculation, with clarity. Every action becomes intentional. Every decision becomes meaningful. He begins to understand pressure in a new way. Pressure is not an enemy. It is a test. It reveals the truth about the mind. Weak minds collapse under pressure, but disciplined minds grow stronger. They adapt. They learn. They refine themselves. Pressure becomes fuel that sharpens focus and strengthens will. Fear becomes information. Doubt becomes guidance. Obstacles become opportunities. He understands that victory is never random. It is built through repetition, through discipline, through consistency. A distracted mind is already defeated, while a focused mind is already advancing towards success. So he trains his mind daily, shaping it, refining it, protecting it from distraction. He builds order within chaos, creating systems of thinking that allow him to remain grounded even when everything around him is uncertain. He controls what he can and adapts to what he cannot. This balance becomes his strength. Emotional control becomes the foundation of his power. He understands that anger clouds judgment, fear weakens action, and impatience destroys precision, but calmness creates clarity, and clarity leads to intelligent decisions. He begins to see beyond what is visible. Where others see problems, he sees patterns. Where others see obstacles, he sees opportunities. His perception becomes his greatest advantage. Time no longer controls him. He controls how he moves within time. He understands that rushing leads to error, while patience builds precision. Every thought, every action must align with a greater vision. Every step must have purpose. He no longer seeks validation from others. He no longer depends on external approval. His confidence is built from discipline, from consistency, from self-mastery. He becomes independent, strong, and focused. He understands the power of repetition. Mastery is not achieved instantly. It is built through consistent effort, repeated again and again until excellence becomes natural. Habits shape identity, and identity shapes destiny. So every small action matters. Every disciplined choice builds the future. He also understands the importance of adaptability. The world is constantly changing. Situations evolve, challenges, success shift. Those who remain rigid break, while those who adapt remain strong, controlled.
Flexibility becomes a key to sustained. His awareness expands beyond the present moment. He begins to think ahead, to anticipate outcomes, to prepare for different possibilities. This foresight allows him to move with confidence, while others hesitate in uncertainty. Failure no longer holds power over him. He sees it as feedback, as a signal, pointing toward improvement rather than defeat. This perspective removes fear and replaces it with curiosity and determination. He learns to direct his energy carefully, understands that wasted thoughts, unnecessary reactions, and uncontrolled emotions drain strength, while focused intention builds it. So he protects his mental space. He chooses his focus. He eliminates distraction. Over time, the void transforms. It is no longer empty. It becomes a place of creation, a space where ideas are formed, strategies are built, and clarity is sharpened. He becomes comfortable in solitude because he understands that true growth happens away from noise, away from influence, away from chaos. He studies himself, deeply recognizing patterns, habits, beliefs, and automatic reactions that once controlled him. He reshapes them, consciously replacing weakness with discipline, distraction with focus, building a mind that works for him, not against him. Every moment becomes training, every challenge becomes a lesson, every delay becomes an opportunity. Nothing is wasted. Everything contributes to growth when used with the right mindset. He learns to detach from outcomes while staying committed to effort, focusing on the process rather than immediate results. Because true victory is built step by step, thought by thought, until success becomes inevitable. His mind becomes stable, unshakable, focused. He no longer fears uncertainty. He no longer doubts his direction. He no longer hesitates in action, because he understands that the real battle was always within. Victory is not about defeating others. It is about mastering self. It is about controlling thoughts, directing emotions, building discipline, and maintaining clarity, even under pressure. And when this level of mastery is reached, everything changes. Fear disappears, doubt fades. Hesitation is replaced with certainty. He moves forward with confidence, not because the path is easy, but because his mind is prepared. The battle has already been won within him, long before it appears in reality. And from that point forward, every action he takes, every decision he makes, every step he moves is guided by clarity, discipline, and purpose. Victory is no longer a possibility. Victory becomes inevitable. He enters a new victory becomes a state of mind. Victory becomes who he is. He does not stop here, because mastery is not a destination. It is a continuous path that expands as the mind becomes stronger and more aware. After reaching a level where silence no longer feels empty but powerful, he realizes that the real journey has just begun deeper within the layers of his consciousness. The phase of awareness where thinking itself becomes more refined. He no longer just controls thoughts, he begins to observe the origin of thoughts, where they come from, why they appear, and how they influence direction of action. This awareness creates a deeper level of control, where even unconscious reactions start becoming visible. In this stage, he understands that the mind is not a single-layer system, but a multi-dimensional structure, where each layer influences the next one. Thoughts shape emotions. Emotions shape decisions. Decisions shape reality, but beneath all of that lies awareness, the silent observer that never changes. He begins to strengthen that observer within himself. Now, silence becomes even deeper than before. It is not just absence of noise. It becomes a tool of intelligence. In this silence, he can detect patterns within his own thinking. He notices how certain thoughts repeat, how certain emotions trigger reactions, and how certain memories influence behavior without permission. He starts breaking these patterns one by one, not by force, but by understanding. Every pattern he breaks creates space for new thinking. Every limitation he removes expands mental capacity. He begins to feel lighter, not physically, but mentally, as if layers of unnecessary thoughts are being removed from his system. In this state, he realizes something even more powerful, that external reality is not as solid as people believe it is. It is constantly shaped by internal perception. Two people can experience the same situation, but interpret it completely differently, based on their internal state. This realization makes him even more careful with his mind. He becomes selective with thoughts he allows into his awareness. He filters everything unnecessary, understands that mental space is limited and valuable. Now, his discipline reaches another level, where he no longer struggles with distractions, because distractions naturally lose power over him. His attention becomes stable, like a fixed point. Even when thoughts try to pull him away, he gently returns to focus without resistance. He begins to explore mental endurance, pushing his focus for longer periods of time without breaking. Flow state. In this deep concentration, he discovers something new, that time behaves differently. When the mind is fully aligned with one task, hours feel like minutes, and effort feels effortless. This becomes his new training ground. He practices sustaining clarity under pressure, simulating internal challenges, where confusion, uncertainty, and complexity are intentionally introduced into his thinking, but instead of collapsing under it, he learns to remain stable, observing everything without losing direction. He realizes that true intelligence is not about knowing everything. It is about staying clear when nothing is clear. As he continues this journey, he starts noticing changes, not just in itself. Colors of thoughts feel sharper, decisions feel faster, awareness feels expanded. Is no longer reacting to life. He is interpreting it in real time, understands deeper motivations behind actions. This gives him clarity in judgment and stability in interpretation. But the most important realization he reaches is that external victory is meaningless without internal alignment. Even if someone achieves success, he also begins to understand human psychology on a deeper level, not to control others, but to understand patterns of behavior. He studies how people think under stress, how they react under fear, how they behave under confidence, and how their decisions shift based on emotional state. This knowledge makes him more aware, not superior, just more observant. He sees beyond surface-level reactions, and in this phase, he also understands that control does not mean suppression. Control means direction. Emotions are not meant to be destroyed. They are meant to be guided. Anger becomes energy, fear becomes caution, excitement becomes motivation. Everything has its place when properly directed. He begins training emotional balance like a system. Instead of reacting instantly, he pauses, observes, and then responds. This small gap between stimulus and reaction becomes his strongest advantage. Within that gap lies his power. He starts applying this mindset to imagine scenarios where pressure is extreme, uncertainty is high, and outcomes are unknown. But instead of panicking, he trains himself to stay centered in every possible outcome. This builds mental resilience that cannot easily be shaken in the outside world, but remains mentally unstable. That success will always feel incomplete. He continues, refining habits, removing unnecessary mental noise, simplifying his thinking and focusing only on what truly matters. Complexity reduces and clarity increases. His mind becomes structured like a system, where every thought has purpose, every idea has direction, and every decision aligns with long-term vision. He starts experiencing a new kind of confidence, not loud, not emotional, but stable, unshakable, and quiet. This confidence does not depend on outcomes, it depends on understanding of self. At this stage, he realizes something deeper, that mastery has no final point. It keeps expanding as long as awareness keeps growing. There is no final version of self, only continuous evolution. So he stops chasing completion and starts embracing progression. He understands that true strength is not about controlling the world. It is about controlling the interpretation of the world within the mind. And as his awareness expands further, he no longer sees himself as someone trying to achieve victory. He sees himself as someone who is continuously becoming victory through discipline, clarity, and awareness. This is not the end of the path. This is the beginning of deeper mastery, and the journey continues endlessly within the silence of the mind, where true power is always being created. Like, share, and subscribe for more deep mindset and psychological mastery content.